Wednesday, July 30. I am Bosin Amofaye, and a warm welcome, everyone, to today's edition of News Now.
And I am Melissa Enoch. Thank you all for joining us live here at the FMDQ studios in Lagos.
And this is how money moves today. Let's start with the Monetary Policy Committee of the Ghana Central Bank just concluded their interest rate meeting for July, speaking to the considerations and the latest interest rate decisions by the Monetary Policy Committee is the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Asiama. Now let's go to Accra live for the press briefing.
Period. Beyond the first quarter, the bank's high-frequency real sector indicators pointed to sustained pickup in economic activity. The Composite Index of Economic Activity, or the CIA, grew by 4.4% year-on-year in May 2025, compared to 3.4% in the same period of 2024. International trade activities, consumption, construction, and tourist arrivals contributed to the improvement in economic activity during the period. The latest business and consumer confidence surveys reflected improved sentiments on the back of easing inflationary pressures and strong optimism about economic conditions. Since the last MPC meeting, headline inflation has declined further to 13.7% in June 2025 from 18.4% in May, the lowest reading since December 2021. The deceleration was underpinned by the tight monetary policy stance, fiscal consolidation, easing food supply constraints, as well as the strong recovery of the cedi. In line with the easing underlying inflation pressures, the bank's main core inflation measure, which excludes energy and utility items, has declined markedly. Similarly, inflation expectations by banks, consumers, and businesses are broadly anchored. Growth in monetary aggregates remained subdued during the first half of the year, primarily.
That was Dr. Johnson Asiama, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, providing some background to interest rate decision by the central bank. That's the communique which comes out at the end of their rate-setting policy meeting. Let's move on. In other news, Zimbabwe's finance minister, Professor Mthuli Mncube, has announced a 6-month national review of levies, licenses, fees, and permits, starting with the country's agriculture sector. The government says it's looking to ease regulatory burdens on businesses, reduce compliance costs, and align Zimbabwe's business environment with regional best practices. Now, specific fee revisions for the agri sector are expected by next week, and other sectors are due to follow. Melissa Enoch is standing by at the FMDQ archive room for more on today's News Now.
Thank you very much, Bosin. Let's now go to Kenya, where all banks are required to price their loans using a uniform interbank base rate, which is anchored to the central bank base rate. Kenya's financial regulator announced on Tuesday the interbank rate, now at 9.62%, must stay within a plus or minus 0.75 percentage points of the central bank rate. The new system aims to increase transparency and align rates more closely with actual funding costs in Kenya. And in corporate news, Yango, a tech company based in the United Arab Emirates, has opened a new African regional headquarters in Abidjan, the Ivorian economic capital. Yango Group says the plan was to support its rapidly growing footprint across the continent and reinforce its long-term commitment to Africa. Yango already operates in 16 African countries and had first launched in Côte d'Ivoire back in 2018. The new Abidjan hub will serve as Yango's command center for its diverse digital services portfolio. The curtains fall today on the 4th edition of the Afreximbank Trade and Investment Summit in the Caribbean. The 3-day annual event for 2025 was focused on increased economic relations between homeland Africa and the Caribbean states. Let's now listen to excerpts from the Executive Vice President of Afreximbank, Kanayo Awani.
We're also collaborating with the CARICOM Secretariat to conduct a feasibility study for the establishment of a CARICOM Exim Bank that can serve the needs of member countries and leverage trade to deliver development. Much has been said about the Caribbean payment and settlement system modeled after our Pan-African payment and settlement system to decolonize our payment systems and empower regional trade in local currencies. The CAPS, as we now call it, and PAPS, will make it possible for trade in local currencies and is estimated to save over $1 billion annually in foreign exchange conversion costs and settlement delays. To support the technological advancement of our people, we are supporting the PJ Patterson Institute of Afro-Caribbean Advocacy at the University of West Indies to establish the Africa-Caribbean Hub dedicated to the pioneering work of generative artificial intelligence. It was interesting to hear the discussion on the panel earlier. We're also collaborating.
It has been a year since Ethiopia flagged up its rapid-fire economic and market reform programs. According to the central bank, Ethiopia inflation has slashed to 13.9% from 20% a year ago. The bank also listed other key achievements of the reforms to include the launch of the electronic interbank markets, growing deposits by 41%, and the doubling of commercial bank foreign currency assets. Other milestones in 1 year of reforms was the 33% surge in foreign currency inflows into Ethiopia, peaking at $32 billion this month. And that's it for your news now. Bolson is standing by at the FMDQ ticker tape room for our markets round after the break. Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to Money Moves. Let's move on to the markets. But just before we go to the equities market, this is the latest. The Bank of Ghana has cut interest rates a massive 300 basis points, haircut by Dr. Johnson Asiama and the rest of the monetary policy team. That now takes the country's headline interest rate to 25% from 28% previous. That's just the breaking news out of the Bank of Ghana. We started that earlier when the briefing by the central bank governor was ongoing. Of course, the press briefing is still on with the question and answers now taking place with the members of the press in Ghana. Ghana has just cut interest rate by 300 basis points, taking the country's headline interest rate down to 25% from 28% previous. And that's the latest out of Ghana. Let's move on. We selected equities markets today. The Nigerian stock market moved on by another 1% today, taking the All-Share Index to 139, roughly 140 if that happens between now and Friday. That would take the NGX All-Share Index to a new record high. The BRVM next door eked out 6 basis points today. Look at the ticker tape and of course the dashboard. You find the Zimbabwe market still recovering, 0.29%, bigger than what we saw on Tuesday, 202.03. The GSE is also back in the green, 0.15%, despite concerns that there may be no time between Pretoria and Washington trashing out a trade deal before the deadline expires. For South Africa to be hit with 30% trade tariff, which President Trump says is going to hit the South Africa's economy with. And of course, President Trump also says within the last 24 hours that it's likely not to attend the G20 leaders meeting, which is coming later in the year. He says he's likely going to send someone to South Africa to attend that. It's going to be a major miss for President Trump not to be there. President Trump says he's got issues with the South African government and some of the policies, and therefore is not likely to attend the G20 summit. We're not too sure who within the administration in Washington will be going to South Africa for the first time. South Africa is hosting the presidency of the G20. Now the U.S. president says he's not likely to attend. Still in the market, the Egyptian market back today in the negative territory by 0.66%, while the Moroccan market up by roughly 0.7%. Now let's go to the 10-year paper, looking at the government bonds, as it were. The U.S. 10-year paper got a bit of a breather today. That's at the top of the pack, as you can see, 0.20%. That's a positive reading. That takes the yield on that instrument to 9.800% from around 9.84% where we were on a Tuesday. The Moroccan 10-year paper now printing 2.835%, and that's also some positive, a bit of a haircut, just about 4 basis points. Now, let's check through today's data as far as currency is concerned. The rand fell this afternoon to around 17.91 on the US dollar. That's 0.13%. The naira also down to 1,533.79 against the greenback. That's, of course, because the dollar index still moving in the upward trajectory. I checked just about an hour before we started the show. The dollar index, what we call the DXY, was printing 99.46 against its peers. That's 0.58%, and it's still early hours yet on the East Coast in the United States, so the dollar trading is still on. Other currencies also fell. That the CFA franc in West Africa, which is the currency for French-speaking West Africa, was 1.73% negative against the US dollar, 568.6. It's a major pressure for the CFA franc in West Africa. Let's leave that. Let's move on to the commodity space, and you can see the comeback in the price of oil, which has been over the last 3 sessions, roughly since we started the week, since the news came out that the US and the European Union has a deal on the table as far as trade is concerned. Everyone is looking at whether some reprieve will come with a trade deal between Washington and China before the 1st of August. All of that in play today. We're keeping an eye today, 7 p.m. West African time, 7 p.m. Nigerian time, when we'll hear from Jerome Powell, the U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman, as far as the U.S. interest rate decision is concerned. What's the guidance? What will that be this evening from Jerome Powell as to when interest rate cuts will happen? Perhaps no longer 2025, maybe sometime early in 2026. The market is also waiting for that. Then, of course, the big earnings that we're seeing on Wall Street, all this in play today. So the Brent price is up 0.22%, and its cousin, the WTI, also up by nearly the same margin, around 12:45 GMT. Everyone is looking at what and how the sanctions that are likely going to be hit to hit Russia. US President Trump says he's giving President Putin just about 10 to 12 days to resolve a ceasefire issue with Ukraine. That's the latest that we have on our hands. So that is moving oil prices also onto the upper side. Let's move into metals place. As you see, the dashboard also coming through. Gold is softening slightly as the dollar makes a very strong comeback. 0.05% today for the yellow metal, 3,322. That's around 12.54 GMT. Copper prices down by around 11 basis points. Aluminium's crossing to a new high, 2,700 for the first time since we started the year. That's about 3.9%, roughly 4% so far today. Everyone is piling up some of these basic resources ahead of what is coming up from the 1st of August as far as metal tariffs is concerned from President Trump, platinum, copper in everyone's place. So you got a bit of a rally coming in some of these basic resources. And finally, in commodities, which is, of course, soft or agriculture, cocoa prices at 8,004. That's a bit of a decline from where we were some time ago, but that moved up today, 2.26% very strongly. Coffee prices is also heading back to $300 from where we started the week on Monday, 0.78%. Palm oil, however, is still staying below the 1,000 level, $992.69. That's off by 0.13%. And finally, sugar trading around 1640, 1.15% in the red, around 1256 GMT. These are some of the data we're covering for you. Remember, it's got a very busy economic data this week. The U.S. non-farm payroll will be out on Friday. We've got a whole lot more data to cover. We'll get more details out of Ghana's central bank interest rate decision today, cutting headline rate by 300 basis points, taking the headline figure to 25% on the back of economic recovery that was seen under President John Mahama's presidency. But that's it for today and the rest of my team. Look at the ticker tape just across my head, and you can track the FMDQ trading day for this Wednesday, the 30th of July. I am Bosin Omofaye. From me and the rest of the team here at the FMDQ studios, we say thank you for watching. I'll be back very soon.